What's that?
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Renee Schleicher. I know it says Laura Hawley. I'm actually standing in for our current IFDA president here in Philadelphia, Laura Hawley. Unfortunately, she couldn't be with us this morning. We also have with us Stephanie Graham, who was our past president. And what is your official title, Stephanie? I always forget.
Chapter advisor now.
Yes, thank you. So I do have backup, but I'm actually the communications person for IFDA. And today we're really excited. Our programs director, Melody Berkey, was able to line up Amy Flurry for us this morning. And she's going to talk about her book, Recipe for Press, which is specifically geared for interior designers and how interior designers can create press for themselves or how they can get press. So that's actually her expertise. So without further ado, Amy, I'll let you take it from here and give a little bit of background to the presentation.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
And do you think do you think we should mute or?
Yes, I'll mute everybody.
Oh, and also though we did speak about just during the presentation, rather than me speaking for an hour, as questions come up, unmute yourself or
I'll put them in chat and I'll make sure I bring Amy. But at the end, we would like to do a question and answer session live. So if you want to hold your question to the end, that's fine. But if you have a question that you want to ask during a topic, just put it in the chat and I'll make sure I ask Amy for you. Okay. So if everybody could mute themselves, that would be great.
Okay. Well, it's really, really nice to be here. Happy Friday. Another week has rolled around. When I went to my printer early this week, she was like, can another year just roll can we just roll into the new year? It's such a strange thing for these weeks to kind of pass so quickly in this time, but it's nice to be here, and I'm happy to be able to share something that I am very I really feel strongly about. I'm actually really passionate about communications, communicating well, positioning your companies and your brands. And I do come from, just by way of a little backdrop, I spent 2 years in the editorial writing for, some of the largest magazines in the country, both on the interiors and fashion side. But what made me a little bit different, and I'm sharing this because it really speaks to the point of view by which I wrote the book Recipe for Press. What made my experience a little different as a freelancer was that I was not in a cubicle in New York, sitting there waiting for pitches to come to me. I was out and, visiting people's studios, boutiques, more behind the scenes, and really meeting so many people. And when you freelance and you find a good story, essentially, I wouldn't write it just one way. I would place it in like 4 or 5 different magazines before I was done with it. And that felt really good to people on the receiving end, businesses, designers, fashion designers, boutiques. But the minute I left, because I made it so easy, because it's easy when somebody comes to you and says you're fabulous and I love your projects and show me more and let's sit and have a talk. But the minute I would go to the next person, that company was always like, come back, I need to do that again. It was very impactful to the business, but they just did not know how, and not everybody can afford a publicist. But what I understood as the editor and writer was you did not need a publicist always. Now we hope to get to a place where we could really use their help and can afford that. But in terms of businesses, what I understood was communications was coming on very strong, and you would need to be able to really manage your in-house communications and understand what that meant. And there was a lot that you could do on your own before enlisting the help of a publicist. And in fact, that helps a publicist. It doesn't, if you understand the drill, if you don't undermine their work on your behalf at the time when you need them most. So that is, the book that you're seeing on the screen is my latest book that's specifically for the interiors industry and for interior designers. And this was my first book, and this was more a DIY PR kind of fundamentals. The reason that I wrote a second book, and specifically for designers, is that designers were, by and large, the biggest audience that came to my talk. And when I started to notice that and have opportunities in the interiors field, I just paid attention to all of the opportunities that were coming to designers for brand positioning, for press opportunities. And I could see the overwhelm. I could see the overwhelm with these firms that at one point it was okay to just be a designer. But then suddenly they need a small marketing team to handle the Instagram, to handle, meeting, creating relationships with regional editors, and working with manufacturers who now wanted to feature them. There's just a lot of opportunity, and the reason is because all of these channels came to all of us at the same time and have become very important in how we share and share our work. So my book, basically, and my books have always come from the point of view of somebody who is sitting on the other side of that table, not the Oz that you think they are sometimes, or it feels like you are when you're pitching your story, but from a person who is on the other side, who could really simplify what they need, what editors need in a pitch, and what they don't need. And I would see people make the same mistake over and over and over, and think they were really doing the right thing. In fact, they were overdoing it, but no editor is really going to tell you that. But given I was a freelancer, I felt like everyone should know, because if you know, then you would correct and you would pitch in a way that suggested that you get it. And the person that knows you get it is the editor on the receiving end. And that's who they want to work with for a number of reasons. For a number of reasons that you all know why you work with people that get it, right? You can nod your heads. I mean, that's, and that means that they're prepared for press, that they're going to understand when things don't shake out and you don't get featured, that editor is going to be on your side looking for another opportunity. They're quick to respond. They're loaded in amazing imagery. There are just certain things that people who get all the press have in common. And once we get through with this talk, you'll be like, well, this makes a lot of good sense. It's common sense. But until somebody shares it with you in this way, that it can feel daunting, like somebody maybe is making a judgment on, your project or your story, or you don't understand why, you can't get past a point in your pitching. What I just always like to say is that those editors and anyone who is sharing stories, they operate on new. They need new all the time. So if they do not find you, then it is quite all right for you to find them and to pitch them. They're in need of it, and now more than ever. I did a talk on what editors need now about 3 months into COVID, and they are so reliant on interior designers or companies that are, have good photography, because they can't get out and do those shoots anymore on their own. So it certainly shifted to your favor. But spoiler alert, the new publicist, and I think we all know it, is on us. It's on us to get that right from the inside and to control that message before you go share wildly. How do you pitch? We're going to talk about that. What do editors want? I just think the kind of golden rules of getting anyone's attention, when you realize the power of press and when you realize how much opportunity is out there, you can get very excited about this stuff. But I will tell you that the bulk of the work is in the lead up to pitching. It's not the pitch. The pitch is in an email. It is 2 paragraphs maximum. It should not be longer than that, maybe a few bullet points. It is pictures that lead to a Dropbox or some link that has a few more pictures, and to your website. That is it. That is it. But the bulk of the work leading up to the pitch, to position it so that you have done most of the work for that editor that you're pitching, is in doing the research, reading the publication that you are going to pitch, whether it's online or whether it's in print. No editor is going to run an idea that is fabulous if it doesn't fit into the formula that they're showing you month after month. They have a formula that's working for them. So to bring them a great but wild kind of idea that is good, but it's not a good fit, that's what I mean by research. Like, do you see people like you represent? Do you see stories like yours that you want to pitch, or angles? Keeping it short, you know, not everybody's reading a whole lot these days, but there's so much in the inbox that an editor is going to make a decision whether to go to your website in about 3 to 5 seconds, quite frankly. And we're going to talk about this, but that first impression is going to be in the picture that you send with the pitch. They're going to look at that first and then read your pitch. People who get a lot of press are quick responders. They don't get discouraged by no's. It's generally no, thank you for, it's no for now. If you can kind of adopt that understanding, be easy to work with. And I'm going to continue to suggest reading the book, because obviously I had a lot to say about this that ended up in a book form. Because an hour was never enough, but I am going to give you kind of the overview, and we can talk about questions. We can do a Q&A as well. I would never pitch. I would never begin the journey of pitching if I didn't understand the purpose of why I want press in the first place. And you would be surprised. I'm sure it's none of you here, but I have given talks all over the country and then done small groups afterwards, and people have spent time, paid money, you know, just dedicated a lot to learning how to pitch. And when I asked them, well, why do you want press? If I asked specifically, I remember asking one woman specifically, what is it? What do you want this for? She is just stunned. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I should be doing it because all my peers are also. And so I asked a few more questions, and it became clear to me, she knew kind of why, but she did have that feeling that, like, I need to be getting press because, you know, other interior designers are, that are important to me, that are my peers. But really, when I asked enough questions, what she wanted specifically, and this is what I mean by asking, what is the purpose? What she wanted was more work in a neighboring city. She was fully saturated. You know, she had enough work where she was, but she wanted a few more jobs in the city nearby. And why this is so critical to understand is, for someone who is an expert in creating strategy around purpose, then I could create a roadmap for her. Easy. I would know where to go. I would know what I wanted to be in. And sometimes when you ask people that don't understand the purpose, where you want to see your work, it's House Beautiful, it's Elle Decor, Arc Digest. But really what would help her most is to be in front of the readers of the area that she wants to be working in. So that might mean a smaller publication, but one that is going directly into the mailboxes of the zip codes where she wanted work. So I think that makes good sense, but that's when you understand what it is. Do you want to you know, are you looking to speak more as an expert, or do you have a product, or are you looking to you know, collaborate with others? These questions you need to kind of ask yourself before you really create a roadmap for yourself. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. There are many ways to use press. I think of positioning. That is a great and free, if you can get it, way to position your company and differentiate. But knowing what you want it to do before you get it is really smart. If, for example, we were looking for more clients in a neighboring city, then again, I would be going to the newsletters for those neighborhood publications, maybe a holiday show house, partnering with someone who has a strong newsletter or communications presence in that area. And the whole key to getting press on your own, and I touched on this a little bit, is thinking like an editor. Imagining you are on the other side of the table, receiving the pitch. I can't tell you how much this will help you get closer to landing press on your own. And press looks differently these days. It's not just in print, it's online. It's manufacturers have catalogs that feature designers and feature companies in the interiors industry. Everybody has so many channels. It is, if you have an Instagram, you are the editor of that social channel. So you have to think like an editor and really do the research and read and ask yourself these questions. Like, oftentimes people would show me, like, I have a whole house. Where can I place this whole house? And very few places run whole house features. It's very hard to get them. Sometimes they take 1 to 2 years to land even, because there's a lot of choice. But if I were being strategic and I had a whole house and I really wanted press to work for my company, then I would look at that house and think, how many stories, this is an editor's mindset, how many stories are within that house? You know, that's how I would break up any one project to the benefit of my company if I were really going to invest time in positioning through press and pitching. Does that make sense? So rather than pitch the whole house, I might pitch the indoor-outdoor story, or I might pitch a bold statement lighting in the kitchen. You know, I would break it up and find places for each of these. Okay. Right now, I don't know how much of an investment any of you have made into photography, but if you were seeking press, and if you were looking to position to anew your firm, and if I could only say one word in this talk, I would just say photography, and I would feel like I had really done the best I could by you. That's how important owning your photography, owning the editorial rights, and getting those spaces photographed as best you can, you know, with the best photographer as you can afford. Because there's so many places you're going to use that, and those images are going to position your company. You would use them for your website. You would use angles of them to elevate your Instagram, you know, positioning. But when it comes to getting press, and where we are now, but where we were even before COVID, the magazines do not have big budgets to go and to send photographers. Some have a little budget and will assign a photographer to, you know, the story, but by and large, they are going to use the photography that is brought to them. And that investment will go farther than relying on the magazine, any one publication to, you know, come and photograph your project. But having worked on the inside, having been a communications partner with firms, I know that that photography goes so far in, you know, how your website looks. And when an editor finds your work, the first place they are going to go to, you know, really take a little deeper dive into who you are and what you do is your website. And they're going to make judgment calls, you know, on the work based on that photography and on how it looks. But also you have to think, when it comes to getting press, that if they are going to send tens of thousands of subscribers or eyes to your website, that it needs to represent them well too. That it needs to make them look good. So we are publications, you know, all of this is very aspirational. I want to ask how many of you have a great picture of yourself, an editorial style picture of yourself? We're going to talk about that because oftentimes the story is not the project, it's you. And that portrait of yourself, you know, it doesn't look like how you look when you go to an install. It's very aspirational. It's fancy. But they need to see that to understand, to register that you are ready for press. Okay. Any questions so far?
I actually have a question. So when you're thinking about professional photography and maybe you want to target like a specific publication, because different publications have different, I don't know how to say that, like different feels, you know, like Architectural Digest photography is different than like HGTV's magazine.
Right.
So when you're shooting the photography and you're hoping to get published in some, is that something that you should think about when you're having this, you want to gear it towards a specific publication?
Yes, you should think about it because for this reason, those editors, the photographers are not employed by that magazine. Those photographers are freelancers. And if you are aiming to get the kind of attention and those photographers know what that magazine needs too. They know the editor very well. They know the styling that they like. And they also have the ear to those editors more than anyone. So oftentimes the editors are asking those photographers, what are you seeing? Who did you see? What did you know? So if I were trying to find a photographer and I had a magazine that I really wanted to be a part of, I would look at the bylines of the photographers they're working with, and you'll begin to see the same names. And you'll begin to see them even in the competing magazines in your area, but the better ones, because they're working with all of those, and that's who I would go to. Because they understand, they're prepared for interiors. The interior photography is a lot different from just a portrait, and the lighting involved. But honestly, those photographers have the ear to the editors as well. But that's where you would find your photographers. And it's really a mistake to invest half of that cost into somebody who is just a good photographer but doesn't understand interiors photography, because the angles will be wrong even if it's a good picture. They won't be able to use those pictures, and you know, you'll still have had to pay for that, and it not look quite right, or it send that message it's not quite ready. So I would that is one area where I don't skimp on, and I suggest not skimming on, is photography, and understanding like it takes a good interiors photography to get great interior shots. And you will find those in the magazines that you want to be a part of. But I'm not suggesting going to Arch Digest and finding those photographers. I'm suggesting, like, we have Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles and Atlanta Home Magazine. And all of those photographers in that market do national work, but the bulk of their work comes from the regional publications. They're fantastic photographers. So I imagine you have the same situation. You will also find right now, because of COVID, a lot of these photographers have had to drop back into doing more work for their regional publications, and they're more available now than ever to the work that's closer by, because they're not traveling for these big companies, which is where they're making their money. They're not traveling and doing campaigns. They're closer to home right now. Okay, just about this particular screen, it's important to understand that print and online are very different beasts. And but there's a lot of opportunity to get published online first for any publication. And those kind of move with the frequency that, you know, print sticks around for a while, but it also takes a long time to kind of put together, where these online pages are rolling, and they're in constant need of great photography. But the mindset by which they're put together is a little different. Web content is really put together, the stories that are put together based on what people on SEO, what are people searching for now? So you have a hurricane, for example, or you have, you know, I was actually thinking of the fabric shield, and you've got these natural situations happening that require, like, you have to get in the mindset of thinking how to get smoke out of, you know, furniture, is how they would put together the online pages. What are people searching for? How to make a home office for my child, you know? That's the mindset of how to anticipate what online editors are going to be looking for, versus print is put together for national magazines 5 and 6 months in advance. So the time to pitch holiday gift giving or holiday ideas or entertaining stories is not when you start to hear that Christmas music or holiday music. It's back in the summer. Regional magazines print, you know, are 3 to 4 months in advance. So that's in the book. This is like their editorial calendars. You can count on the fact that, you know, in April, a cleaning story is going to be a green cleaning story. These evergreen ideas that you're going to have back to school issue, that holidays, you're going to have some entertaining. You can anticipate and pitch into these ideas. But for online, it's like so fast, but there's so much opportunity for great pictures to get online. And what that means is, like, you can often get in a larger magazine faster, and none of your clients are really going to say, well, were you in print versus, you know, online? It's just, no, I was in Elle Decor's inspo gallery. And you have to read these pages to know, you know, that there is opportunity. So back to researching, just understand that there are opportunities online and there are opportunities for print. And one of the best ways to find the best publications to pitch your project is to really think of your competitor. This is just like time saving and strategic. If you really feel that someone who is very good at getting press or positioning their firm or a product, if you really feel they're your true competitor, often I would see people say, well, she just gets all the press. I would say, well, go and look at the editors that she is pitching. Go and look at where she just got press and the byline of that piece of press, because now that editor is looking for the next person, and there's your roadmap. So that's one quick way to kind of create a, where do I even go, you know, with my story. That's just a fast cheat. But another is to know what's out there. And I will tell you about a media list that I have that is a product that goes along with my book. But my team puts together a media list that is 1,000 plus of the, not just the top publications, but regional and national publications and online publications in the interiors space. And sometimes you just need that fast track to say, where are the opportunities? But I always suggest looking at where people in your, you know, in your area who are really good at getting press or who have the support of a PR firm, go to their press page and see where they got press. Because again, now that editor has written about them and they're looking for the next person. You also need to know that, like, podcasts are press. Being on a panel is a form of press. Manufacturers who in their newsletters highlight designers that they work with, that is press. So there are things outside of just your traditional print publications. And the media list I spoke about, that and my book are online, but been doing this with my team for 9 years. We also do a lot of pitching. So we find our list invaluable. We're always cleaning it up because editors move around a lot. So any one list is always going to have some people that bounce back because they've moved. The minute you press send, you know, this is a clean list. Somebody gets married, changes their name, moves to another publication, which is kind of why I bring this up, is because kind of in this field, writers don't often stay at one publication for a long time. And freelancers, which is where you find a lot of opportunity, like I was, we're working for 15 magazines at any one time. So, so you want anybody that you want to create relationships, and those relationships might become 4 placements over the course of your professional career than just the one that you get the first time. As an editor, as a storyteller, if I found somebody whose work I loved, or whose product I love, or whose story I love, I would, you know, pitch one angle here, one here, one here. Any interiors editor is generally working for a number of other publications, and they'll find angles that fit. But when they move to that next publication, or when they get, you know, a promotion, they'll take you with them. If you understand how to get press, if you understand the tenets that are in this book that we're discussing today about how to support them, you will find that a relationship like that can produce many, many articles. We've talked about the power of pictures. When I said, do you have a good picture of yourself? I advise and consult designers across the country, and I will always ask, you know, show me the portrait, show me the picture of yourself. Do you have a good picture of yourself? This is one example of someone, the picture on the left, she said, I've got a good picture of myself. That's an editorial. And I said, you know, you are a beautiful woman, but that picture looks like your son took it in front of your house. You know, I see the hinge, it's not straightened, and yet it's a beautiful picture of this interior designer. When I said, look at the portraits that are in the magazines you want to be a part of, and have that person who's taking those pictures take a picture of you, this was the picture she came back with. Because of that picture alone, she got more press, and it's a beautiful picture. I know this is not how she looks when she goes to installs, but it's editorial, it's aspirational. It looks like she's ready for that next step. And, you know, she's used this picture for years, and it has helped her. It has helped, and it happens every time I advise someone to get a good editorial picture. You need the help. None of us like having this picture made. It's not how we look day to day. You need the help of a good photographer to elevate that if your intention is to get press, because again, I'm just going to remind you, press is very aspirational. There are a lot of opportunities within that aren't just projects, and I don't understand if everyone's on this call is a designer and they have projects, but just understand that your home often is a great source of press, and editors love the designer's home projects. But when I suggested to another designer that when she didn't have the work fully represented, a young designer, she did not have the work, I said, turn the camera back onto your home and see what you can make of that, and then use those images for your website. You also have opportunities in your team. There's often, you know, stories about that, and your studio. So these are all areas that you might want to consider having photographed if you're not sitting on a lot of projects. And then you want to, in order to create these relationships with editors, you want to go where they go. So we talked about High Point as a great, we're giving talks there, you go, you support, you go and say hello after. You don't pitch an article, you don't pitch your story after, but you go and support and then share. I hear you, I've got something I'm going to be sharing with you soon. But it's very meaningful. It's very meaningful to those editors. More and more, those editors are the face of the magazines. They have to get out, whereas they would prefer to be in their cubicle, editing and putting together a magazine. But that is how they find new faces. That's how they find new work, and they pay attention. And they also pay attention to your Instagram, because oftentimes they're having to use that as a marketplace or kind of where they're finding new ideas and new. And you'll hear me just say that word new over and over. But I know just how meaningful it is to have people to show up at these talks that you're giving, and it's a great time to have that face time. It's not the time to pitch. I roll a lot of editors into talks that I do. This was my book launch, but that's Jane Dagmy with me, and she's the editor of Designers Today, which brings up a great point. There's a lot of opportunity for you for press outside of your traditional city and neighborhood publications. There are trade publications. Designers Today is all about the designer, and they focus on the designer, and they focus on the business of design. So I invited her to be a part of my book launch on how to get press, because she's there looking for opportunities, looking to meet new faces, looking to hear somebody else's story, but also confirming, it was great for me because she's confirming what I say in the book. But all of these perspectives are so valid that you just, showing up and supporting. From my book launch, I think 5 different people ended up in her magazine. I have attended, I'm on the advisory board of the Design Influencers Conference. That's a good one. Just to show how in one picture to represent relationships and how strong they are. And we all know it in life anyway, and in our professions. But the picture on the right, the woman on the left of me was my first editor, the editor who assigned me as a writer. My first article, national article, is for Country Living magazine. Fast forward, 18 years, she's my book editor. I hire her to become my book editor. All along, we're sharing, and she is then an editor with New York Spaces. And then, she's at a conference meeting designers because she's now an editor for book designers. The young woman looking on my right, Claire, was an intern. Then she became assistant editor at Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles. Now she's with Jaipur Living. But just the full circle and how long people stay in each other's network and how much sharing is in the network of editors is wild. So you really want to make relationships, because the first thing we do is share something, that's like, I guess this is nature, but sometimes when we share a lot of good stories. I would share great fits with my competing magazines if I could not use them, because that's how much people who do this love good stories, good projects, good ideas. We would also share the people who were difficult to work with among ourselves. So you don't want to be that person. But anyway, Design Influencers Conference is a great place. Veranda's magazine editor was there. It's just a great place to kind of show yourself and introduce yourself. And I know that in your region, there are probably similar opportunities at design centers. By the time we get to the pitch, and this is the kind of end of my presentation, I saved this for last because the pitch is actually really, really simple. And the more simple and the shorter you can get it, the better. But the most important thing to understand here is that you've researched the person and the publication that you are sending your pitch to. You feel like, as best you can, it's a good fit because you see other people like you and stories like yours being run. And then you've taken the time to really let them know, here's an idea that I'd like to bring to you for consideration. If it's a project, this project, in 2 sentences, what is it that is important about this project. And if you can see like those 3 bullet points, sometimes putting things in bullet points are just a lot easier to digest quickly. So if it's a mix of antiques and contemporary lines, including Lee Industries, this and this, so they quickly see where it is, where, if you're even working with advertisers or companies that they like to support, that's a good one. If there's a point that's like, this was for an this design was for a former school teacher who really highly values organization, that's an interesting point. So what is it about your project that makes it interesting in a bullet point? And then those images are so important. You don't want to put more than 4 in any pitch. And it needs to be in the body of that email, and not high resolution images, meaning they're not so big that you're having to scroll down, but that you have those high resolution images available upon request or through a Dropbox link, but they don't belong in the body of the pitch, but something needs to catch the eye of that editor in the pitch. We're getting to that point where you start probably realizing like, oh, it really is kind of simple. It just takes work to get to where you're going to pitch, but editors love that you're familiar with their publication. And I used to study them. If you put 3 issues side by side, if you put 3 issues of the 2020, January, February, March, and you then put January, February, March of 2019, you would see that there is a formula to the way any publication is put together. You want to pitch into that formula. Does that make sense? What you're seeing on the page is what they're looking for. So that helps you pitch close to what you might think they're looking for. Timely angles and new collections, anything that's new is really, that's the easiest time to get press. But timely angles could also be what is going on in this world, like COVID, and the timely nature of a story about how to, how are designers creating school desks or office or schoolrooms for their kids in their homes would be a timely angle. People who get back to editors really quickly because simply they're just always on deadline and 2 more editors are waiting on them. So if they don't get a response, sometimes they just have to move on to the person that they know is going to respond to them quickly. And kindness and just reciprocity and support over the long term is the relationship that they're looking for with their design community. And here's what they loathe. Like, I know my name is Amy, and there might be a number of other ways to spell Amy, but you'd be surprised how many ways people could come up with to spell Amy. And it's just like, I hear it from editors, just take the time to look at small things like this. They want to be pitched by email, not by DM or a phone call. They're always going to have to, if you did that, they're always going to have to send you back and say, like, pitch that in the email. Once you have that relationship, editors do get more casual and they will come to you, sometimes in text, sometimes in an Instagram DM, but initially the proper way is to pitch by email.
Hey,
yeah.
Kane Wilk asked, when you're researching, is going to the masthead and sending straight to the editor, or are there others who are good to reach out to?
That is a great question, and I have a whole chapter almost on that in the book on how to read the masthead. Because when you look at the masthead, you're going to see 2 mastheads. I'm just opening up to this page. Because when you look at a masthead, it can be confusing if you don't know who to pitch to. The editor-in-chief is the kind of it seems like the obvious person to go to, but generally you want to go to the assistant editor. You want to go to the home editor. These teams have gotten smaller and smaller, so sometimes at a local publication or regional publication, the editor-in-chief is okay, but you will have they have the support of the assistant editors, and that is where you break in. And those assistant editors will become senior editors in about a year, you know, or two. So you really want you'll have a much easier time breaking in with those assistant editors. Also, when you're studying the magazine and you're looking on the page and you say, okay, there's a byline, look at that byline and then check it against the masthead. And you're going to see who is that's the one pulling together those pages, so you can kind of look to see that they are on that masthead. That is the key to who is putting the magazines together. Yes. And it's not the advertising masthead. There's your editorial, and then there's the advertising, and that's the business, and that is separate editorial. And never the two should meet, but they sometimes do. But press, just remember that true editorial is free. Okay. So pitching an unfinished project, sometimes you get super excited, you know you've got a good project and you're almost there, but if it's almost there, they're going to ask you, is it finished? And then you're going to say, well, no, not yet, and they're going to have to tell you to come back, even if it's just with scouting shots when it's finished. Scouting shots meaning I took these shots with my iPhone to best show where the project is right now, and maybe before I even have it photographed. But they still want to see the finished project. Overwhelming, you know, any editor with too many images and is really not a good idea. If you really feel like you've got a project that is worthy of getting published, they don't want to see that you've put that all over your social media. However, sometimes you need to be saying, like, I have a new for your clients, for other people, you get to make that decision. But I would just suggest that you not put the main picture, the entire room that is like the best room on your Instagram. Do a corner of it or a vignette and talk about it being a new project, because editors are looking to see if designers have new projects, but don't put the main one out there over and over, because then they would consider that almost published. You get to follow up once and then twice if you haven't heard and you need to move on and share that project with another editor, but excessive follow-ups become, you know, a flag. So you don't be that person. And just general good attitude, because, you know, they're going to make mistakes. We all do. They're going to let some emails slip off and forget. That's why you follow up. Half of the project placements and even half of good story ideas probably are placed in the follow-up. I would not even pitch if I were not planning to follow up, because it's just too easy at this moment to, you know, we're all inundated with a lot of emails. So sometimes great ideas come and they're like, oh, you know, organized, or they slip off. But the follow-up to me as an editor means you mean business. You understand that I'm in the position, my job is to give somebody press. When I see a follow-up come through, it helps me understand you also understand what you're doing. You are looking to get press from me or for somebody else. But if you don't follow up, it's like you've let that editor off the hook. And just positive relationships. We talk about this. I think that's just in our professional lives, we know how far that goes anyway. But in the editorial world, those positive relationships will double, because that's how small this community is and how much sharing happens between us. So that is my presentation. I probably have a few things to say just about this particular moment, about how to pitch editors now, because it's a really unusual time. But I'll take any of your questions before that. And I also did mention that I was going to put IFDA as a discount code at amyflurry.com. If you wanted to get any of the books or the media list, then you would get 20%. And I'll do that just after this talk.
Yeah, Amy, if you could send me that code too, because I can send everybody a thank you email afterwards, and I can put
Okay.
that code in the email.
Okay,
So
I'll
it's,
do it. I'll do it.
So if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask Amy a question directly, feel free to do so. Thank you, Amy, for that. I'm trying to figure out how I can get press for my company. Since our product's invisible, so we don't necessarily have photographs, so it's going to be a different challenge, but I'm going to figure it out.
It is a different challenge, but I think what you are sharing is where you have it really good is that while your product is invisible, the interior designers using it have images that you could get permission to use. And then it becomes a matter of you being the designer's invisible support team, or something about, you make them look good. You're like in their toolbox. I don't know, but you're operating in an industry that operates in images. So you should be fine. It's the nature of how you communicate that as an essential tool for them.
I was recently listening to a podcast, and they were mentioning a website that when editors or reporters are looking for content, they post what they're looking for. And I can't remember the website right now, but is that something that you would suggest people going on?
It's kind of a free-for-all. I will tell you, it's called Help a Reporter Out. So I think they go by HARO. And I mean, I would almost do it on a different email than the one you use every day, because you will get so many emails. It's a really interesting exercise, but it can be kind of overwhelming. But it can be also a good exercise, because what you're doing is you're seeing the mentality, you're seeing the mindset of the writers and the reporters who are looking for ideas, and how they put those forward kind of gets you in that mentality of understanding how they formulate ideas and what they need, because they're sharing exactly what they need. So I think it's kind of
designers that have had success with that, help a reporter out. I mean, I've seen where designers have used it for just like quick little quotes, and they've gotten
that's generally what it is. And again, about being a fast responder, it is really about who can respond fastest, and who has an image. Like, they might need to run an image of you, or they might be looking for an image specifically of what they're putting out there. So, but it's really a time thing with Help a Reporter Out.
Does anybody have any experience with that? Has anybody ever used that? Help a reporter out? I'd be curious to know if anybody in the Philly area has used that.
It's a great way, though, that is another form of press, is just being the expert and being able to offer a quote. And you can find yourself getting in publications that might be hard to get into otherwise. So that's a good tip. And
anybody? Oops, hang on, I just saw something come through in the chat. Very informative event. I look forward to reading your book. Yep, and we're going to send that discount code out for everybody.
Press is very powerful. I have an art product, but I understood this being on the side, being a writer. And when you don't have, say, maybe the budget for advertising, you can still get press, and you can get it on your own. You do not have to have a publicist to get press, but a good publicist can often help you bump up really quickly. And why? Because they're experts in pitching, but because they have relationships over a long period of time with these editors. But that's exactly what I'm suggesting you begin with your own company and firm, is creating these relationships so that you are the first publicist of your company. Because what I could see is, just like with everybody walking around with iPhones, it's just really quick. It's really easy to lose control of your messaging. So you want to really have the best pictures and the most concise copy within, on your website, because people will use the best before, they want things to look good. So they'll oftentimes use what you have instead of what they can get quickly. But really I saw just this in-house communications as an important role. And it's only been confirmed in the last 5 years that I've been working with interior designers, the opportunity that comes, this kind of starts leaning into showrooms and show houses and being on panels and, you know, having opportunities for small collections with manufacturers. And all of this is buoyed by press and communications. And how your client perceives you often is as well. We were talking a little bit earlier about the home builders and all. They've started come to me to figure out where they really didn't have to start thinking in that. They really were just relying on the work and word of mouth. Now I can see the whole communications trickling down to them too. So it's just a fact of life, is a reality of living in a world of information, and how you use that to collaborate, align, is really, should start with you. That's how I just feel very strongly about that. I also feel strongly because I've seen it and I've experienced it myself, how powerful it can be, and how you don't know the effect. It doesn't always mean because you get published that suddenly you're going to be in the work. You know, you're going to just have all these things, sales. Oftentimes with products, you know, I would hear, well, I really thought I would do better once I get published. It's more like a steady stream of presence is what I feel like people need in the places that speak to your clients. And if that comes from you and from your Instagram and from your newsletters, then let it be as good as it can be, and it will attract people who want to collaborate.
Going back to Help a Reporter Out, Maureen Klein said she has used Help a Reporter Out to see what stories are being asked for lately, and it also asked for help with swag bag fill-ups or distribution of such, which can help with our own fundraisers. So I guess there's other avenues that you can use other than just quotes or pictures.
Well, she brings up a really good point, because they're asking questions about ideas that they are working on right now. So that's basically similar to what I was saying with SEO, or how online publications are kind of pulling together. There you go. There is what's being pulled together right now. So how do you anticipate what editors are looking for? That's a great way to kind of wisely use that as well. So maybe you have an idea, maybe you need help in formulating an idea to pitch to a regional editor. You look at HARO, Help a Reporter Out, and see kind of what story ideas they're pulling together, and maybe you have something that fits into one of those, and that's how you pitch your editor. That's an editorial mindset that could really help you get into that way of thinking. Like, you have to think, if I were putting this magazine together, what kind of stories would I be looking for? And that's where just reading the magazines you're pitching, getting to know them, you start to realize like they have a point of view, and they're looking for people who also have a point of view.
All right, so Elizabeth has a question. Actually, Elizabeth, if you want to unmute yourself and ask directly to Amy, that would be great.
Hi, Amy. My question is, you sort of mentioned at the end of your presentation that you've seen a few changes in regard to, you know, now that COVID has, you know, dropped into our lives in regard to being published. So what have you seen differently, and how should we approach it differently if we want to get published because of COVID?
Yeah, I spent, I do want to direct you on my website, on the blog. There is an article called What Editors Want Now. And I wrote that after talking with about 15 different editors about this very question, because I was curious too. I didn't have the answer to it. I didn't feel like I could be talking about it if I wasn't checking in with them. So there's some good information there. But in the kind of recap or overview of what I was hearing is that, you know, they can't send photography teams out to photograph. So if you are rich in photography, you know, some of them were saying, by all means, share what you have, and almost, it's okay that the times have suddenly changed they want to see what you have, and then they, instead of being as specific as what I've been talking about. So, Hoffman Media, for example, has 11 titles, and they couldn't photograph anything, and suddenly they're completely reliant on whoever's pitching. So just understanding that if you have good photography, do not think that because it's been published once that you can't go back around and see if a different editor might be interested now, like especially for online pages. Then there's the online pages. So much opportunity there, but it is moving a little faster, and you do have to kind of, again, start paying attention to what the bylines, who's putting those together. But they were saying that we have to amp that up now, because that's where everybody's eyes are. And if we are going to exist after COVID, we have to have a strong online presence and engagement. So they were having to churn out more stories for online. So a lot of opportunities for press can be found online. And just remembering that their online publications are really those kinds of story ideas that you're going to see and help a reporter out. They're based on what people are Googling, as opposed to the print magazine is based on, deeper thinking and not what people are Googling. Let me just see, I'm going to quickly look because I did have some notes, more notes around that, but those are two main things. They said be sensitive and be a helpful resource, understanding that they're kind of overwhelmed themselves and trying to figure it out. Tons of online opportunities for home tours, for the inspiration galleries. So for example, what I mean by that is if you go on Elle Decor and then you go over to the 3 lines of like what all is on their page or what else is deep in their site, you might then click and it says design and decor. And then under that, you have a drop down of like home tours or living room or bathroom. So each one of those sections has then inspiration galleries, and they're all around story ideas, like 7 ways to make a small bathroom feel bigger. And then there's an inspiration gallery, and they're pictures from a lot of designers. But on every page that they run a picture, they say from designer in Philadelphia, links to your website, and there you are on Elle Decor. And it's good for your clients to see, oh my goodness, they're on Elle Decor. Even if it's just on that one inspiration gallery, it's still, they kick it back to that designer, and it's just a great spot. And really, a magazine of that stature, they want to break you in anyway online. You don't just jump right into the pages of Elle Decor. They're wanting to get to know you. The assistant editors are generally the ones pulling those together, but they'll be the next in line. They're kind of the gatekeepers to the senior editors. So, it's a really good place to break into magazines. And I think I said, don't limit your thinking to just pitching projects. It's often you, it's your team, it's your studio, it's a story that came out of, you and a client's relationship or work. So there's opportunity outside of just the projects.
Hi, Amy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
And see me? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for sharing with us today. This has been fantastic. In regards to sort of what you just spoke about, having maybe not a full spread in a publication, but perhaps a quote or a one photo that's been included in an article, just like you spoke about. Do you think those, regardless of the spread, do you think that the smaller pieces that have been published are worth putting on to my website in sort of like a press category, even if I don't have full spread articles to put along with it? Do you think that it kind of makes it feel too small. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I just think you want to even edit those that you put on there. You don't want to
Okay.
put everyone on there, but it's still press. And I think even your regional editors would look at that and they see, well, she's getting there. You know, she's getting in the hang. Just like national editors look and see, did you get regional press? Are you kind of the queen of your area? They want to see you've been vetted. So those definitely I would put them on there. But I just,
Okay.
if you just kept getting them over and over from the same spot, I'd pick one or two of the best ones, and I wouldn't put, you know, any more than that on there.
Okay. And then a follow-up question with that, if I may.
Yeah.
I see a lot of fellow designers have sort of like the cover page of the publication, and then a page of the piece of themselves. How do I obtain those? I feel like that's a silly question, but how do you get those?
It's not a silly question. Oftentimes the writer that you work with, there's a way to go about asking, but so if it's in print and you worked closely with that writer, they probably need those as well for their portfolio. So at the time that it comes out, you could nicely ask, like, I'm so excited to share this. Do you have a PDF of, is there any way to get a PDF of this article?
Okay.
But I also work with enough graphic designers to, I'd almost ask them first if you can't pull it off of the site itself, because sometimes you can, and it's not like you don't, it's not like you're bugging the writer, but you still have to be able to get that for yourself. So it's best if you can find out, you know, you can often drag the image is what I'm saying, or sometimes the things that are available online are high resolution enough to use. But otherwise, you know, if it's a really important story to you, then you just go back, and this is the part about relationship building. It's like you thank that editor, you know, or writer, it's the writer, for taking that time on your story, you know, and that means a lot to you. And if it's easy for them to share, that you would love a PDF so that you could share it on your site too and on your channel. Okay. So that's the kind of gracious way of backing into that, you know, or going about asking for that. But I would always, you know, you don't have to send gifts after you get press or anything like that. I was always asked that question. But it always meant a lot to me, not the perfunctory thank you, but even if it came well after an article came out, when someone came back to me and said, you know, I really appreciate that article. I had something happen directly because of it. You know, so that made me feel so good. But our inclination sometimes is to, I would hear this a lot too, which was just made me feel so bad. Like, I thought it was going to be a full page, you know, and it was only a quarter of a page, or, I mean, it was great and all, but, you know, I would hear stuff like that. And I just, you know, they don't know that I stayed up late nights on end trying to tell their story. So always remembering that there's a person on the other side that's trying to, you know, tell your story. Won't always get everything right, but it was very meaningful for me to know, like, that affected them positively if that happened. And a handwritten note was, you know, much appreciated. But to answer your question, you can also do that in an email, and that might be the time. The time to ask for it is when it is out, though, not like months later.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. I always did love telling these stories, and because I think whatever profession we are in, you know, we're always sharing with each other, but that would happen. But what people didn't understand about, like, kind of complaining about something to the person who was doing their best to, like, share something that was free, you know, it wasn't even it's not an ad, was that the minute that happened, I would tell another editor, and it's almost like that spreads so quickly. So you want to be that person that's easy to work with. It's kind of understanding of things. Sometimes other things that could happen in editorial that you can't anticipate, but it's kind of, it does happen. But if you know this in advance, you can kind of prepare yourself for it and how you might handle this. But sometimes I would always say, just don't share until you see that thing in print, because you never know what might come along at the last minute and your article gets bumped. But that editor feels very badly about that and would generally try to get you in the next issue, but it does happen. And sometimes you just have to, just being understanding goes a long way towards creating that relationship where they come back to you time and again, because you're easy to work with and kind of, you get it, you understand the nature of editorial. And
All right. Well, thank you so much, Amy. I think you gave us a lot of information, and then there's even more information on your website, on your blogs that we can.
Lots of information there. Yeah. That is
And
more
then,
up to speed on where we are now.
That's great. Thank you. And then we will be sending out that code for discount on the books, if you could provide that. And then also wanted to let everybody know, fingers crossed, not sure what's going to come, but we're hoping in January, I think it's January 20th, to do a live event in the Philly area with Amy. So
Yes.
yeah,
I'll get there sooner or later. We've been trying to get that worked out, but I really look forward to that.
Yeah, I know Melody's been working with you on that. So just keep your eye out. Hang on, there was one more thing in the chat. Let me just see what it is. Oh, just a thank you for such valuable information.
Oh,
yeah, I think we all kind of echo those sentiments.
Yeah,
So
I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, extremely. Learned a lot.
Good. Well, you all, I hope you'll share any successes, share them with each other, and just, again, know that all of those editors are looking for new stories all the time. So do not be afraid to approach them. They need you to do it.
Stella said that would be great to meet you in person. I think we all kind of echo those sentiments. So
awesome.
Right. Well, we will, with Amy's permission, going to be putting this up on our YouTube channel, our IFDA Philadelphia YouTube channel, in a couple days. And you'll all get an email link to that as well, too. So if you want to share it with somebody else or re-listen to it, to kind of grab some of the information that Amy gave us. I know there was a lot of great stuff in there.
I hope you have a really wonderful weekend.
Oh. Yep. And, Michelle Plachter said, loved it. Thank you for your insight. Great. Yeah, everybody have a great Friday. And thank you, Amy, so much. We really appreciate you taking your time.
I enjoyed spending time. Okay. Thank you.
Have a great Friday, everybody. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.